and welcome. So, hey Vivi. My cat is here. I don't know if she's gonna shark tail across the camera today though. She's not been feeling good again. I'm like 90% sure it's something with her diet and I just don't know what at this point. But yeah, so she is here. She's doing fine otherwise. Hey baby. But I don't know if she's really gonna make much of an appearance. And the kittens are going to make an appearance because August is currently trotting toward me right now. Hi baby. Are you going bad at the camera? I hope not, because that would be really rude. Oh no, she's gonna go mess with my tackle box. Okay. Speaking of, what do you mean by tackle box? I keep my rat supplies organized in a tackle box. They're very big and they're very useful, so that's what I do. Anyway, so one of the things I get a lot of comments on is that something that I'm using in my cage is not safe for my rats. And it is a very common, you're already gonna bat the camera. Yeah. Oh! It is a very common comment that I get is that something I'm using in my rat cage is not safe for them. And I just want to talk about some of the things that people have told me are unsafe and the reasons why I still do or don't use them. And also just kind of discuss this thing as a whole because it's something that comes up a lot and I find that sometimes things get out of hand and it doesn't need to be like that. So yeah, let's just discuss this. The first thing we're going to be discussing is the types of hooks and or clips that I use. The one you're probably most familiar with hearing is bad are pear clips. Now these are shower hooks and they're just called pear clips because they're shaped like a pear. And these are bad because if you hang them like this and they're closed, if you hang them like this and your rat puts their head through this part up here and then fall, they can hang themselves. Now, a lot of people say that if you just hang them like this and keep them open, then it's not that big of a deal or not that dangerous. But certain rats can still get their heads stuck in here and it can still be a dangerous thing. Now, this has happened with multiple rats where they have unfortunately passed away using these clips. I still use these clips because my dwarfs can walk right through this, believe it or not. The majority of my dwarfs, the one exception is Joja, can just walk right through this without any problem. So hanging them like this, they're not really a danger to my rats. So that's why I still use these, but if you don't want to use them, I fully understand. Now, a lot of people say that a good option is a shower hook that is more like this, that is perfectly round. Now, some people say this is still dangerous because if a rat walks through this, they can still get stuck. Most standard size rats are not going to be walking through this. And again, dwarfs, this is definitely big enough for the majority of my dwarfs. Again, Joja might be the only exception. They can just walk right through this. I've never had an issue with these. I think I just got them off Amazon. And you can also leave them open so that if a rat does try to walk through it, it just keeps opening further and further. Which I do usually leave them open because I hate clipping them closed. It's actually really annoying to have to clip these closed. So that is an option. Now, I've never heard of a rat getting stuck in one of these. I think people are just kind of overthinking on that. Now, another clip option is something like this. I think these are called like spring clips. I'm gonna level with you. I've looked up what these are called so many times and I've never retained it. But there's this kind and then I don't have one handy, do I? We'll have to use this kind. And they're basically the same thing. It's just this one is slightly different. And people use those pretty often. They're not the best if you're not very dexterous, but I've never heard of a rat getting hurt with one of these. And then finally, what people say is the safest option, and I'm going to get into why that's not necessarily the case, which is C-clips. I hate C-clips. I hate these. I hate them so much. They fall off of the things I'm hanging constantly. And that is the reason I don't like them and why I'm moving more toward the metal clips. That and because rats chew on these. And the thing with these is sometimes rats chew on them when they're in the thing that they're hanging up. And that's why they're not always the safest option because I've had it very recently, in fact, like with Lamb. They were all sleeping in their spiderweb hammock and one of the quad chewed one of these down and the hammock collapsed because I have it on like a 3-point system, basically, where it's hung from 3 different points of the hammock. And just the way it works, it tilted like this and all the rats came tumbling out. And Lamb was asleep and she's not the most strong girl. She's 2 years and 4 months old. She's pretty old. She's not the strongest. And she went tumbling right down because she was asleep, so she didn't have time to catch herself, basically. She went straight down to the bottom of the cage. So C-clips, that happens a lot, especially once your rats know these are fun to chew. They will just chew them down and down and down and down. So these are also not the safest option. So basically what I'm saying with the clips is you're not going to get a perfect option. I prefer the metal, like spring clips, but these are also a fairly safe option if you are unsure about using these. Because again, if you hang them like this, they are far less dangerous, but I do understand people not wanting to use these. Next up, let's talk about like baby wipes, paper towels, toilet paper, that sort of thing. I've gotten comments not to use those because if the rats ingest them, they'll get an obstruction. And yes, if a rat eats them, they could become obstructed, but the chances that your rat's gonna eat those is almost zero. See, the thing with these is they're really great nesting material, and that was August. The thing with these is that they're really great nesting material, and rats love stealing baby wipes. I have been using unscented baby wipes basically the entire 16 years I've had rats, and my rats love stealing them from me. They always have. And then they nest with them. And the thing with rats is that the things that they chew, they're not actually ingesting. And I know a lot of people get nervous about that kind of thing because you see your rat chewing on something. But rats aren't like cats or dogs where if they're chewing on something, there's a very good chance that they are going to ingest some of it. Rats have extra flaps in their mouth that prevent them from swallowing the things that they are chewing. And most of the time when they're chewing something, it is just to shred it for nesting material. And rats know when they want to eat something and when they don't want to eat something. So the chances of them ingesting a baby wipe or a paper towel or toilet paper is pretty minimal. Now, rats can get something called pica or pica, I've heard it pronounced both ways, and basically that's just where they are ingesting foreign objects. Now, I've had this with my rats when they're coming out of anesthesia or when their pain meds or the pain meds they give them or something at the vet when they have surgery. It gives them pica, and you just have to watch them when that happens. I'm sure there are instances of rats when they aren't medicated having pica. And again, that is a completely different situation. That is a medical issue, and nothing in the cage is safe at that point. So if they do have pica, making sure they don't have like a paper towel, baby wipes, toilet paper, that's not going to prevent them from ingesting stuff. That is a medical issue, and it needs to be addressed very quickly. Plastic falls under that same category. A lot of people say don't put plastic in their cage because they're going to chew it, they're going to ingest it. They won't. If you've ever had your rats chew on plastic, you will notice like the little bits, like the C-clips, for example, are very bright, colorful clips. And when they chew them down, I find little bits of C-clip all over their cage. So like, you'll find the evidence of the chewed plastic. Out in the living room, I have one of these in the cage, one of these baskets, and they decide to make themselves a little window. And Blooper chewed just like a perfect square in the side of it. And I was walking around my living room and I kept seeing these little pink bits of plastic. And I was like, what is this? And then later that day I went to feed them and I was like, oh, that's what that is. That's what that is. Now let's talk about hammocks and baskets. I've seen people talk about both. So this type of hammock specifically gets discussed about how you shouldn't have this kind because your rat can chew it up and it gets like a little actually my rats have chewed this one up like this. It gets like this and they can get their little toes caught in it, and that's not good. Now here's the thing, and the same with baskets. I've been told not to use my spiderweb hammock basket things because someone had their rat get their tail caught in it somehow. I truly don't know how. And they became injured. So here's the thing with these objects. I've had far more issues with just plush fleece hammocks. Like not store-bought hammocks, not that kind of hammock, not the baskets. I've had far more issues with homemade or like small business fleece hammocks. Like this kind of hammock where it's just, I bought this off someone on Etsy. I've had far more issues with this kind of hammock than with the other kind of hammock, because the thing with this is rats like to chew and they chew quickly. And sometimes you put a hammock in and it's in one piece and it's beautiful and everything's fine. And the next morning you come out and it's in tatters. And that has caused me more issues because they get stuck in it. They get their leg wrapped around in it. They injure themselves that way. And I've never had like a catastrophic injury, keeping that in mind. But like I have had, especially with older rats, where they have issues. Ducky, for example, when she had HLD, she got trapped in one of those and couldn't get out of it for I don't know how long, because I found her like in the morning. So for all I know, she was stuck like all night. And then like even recently, Lamb got stuck in one of those because again, she's an older girl. She doesn't have the best mobility and I had to get her out. I've had it where they had chewed a hole in it and were sleeping inside. And I've mentioned this before, my rat Foggy, she tried to get out of it and she tweaked her back and paralyzed half her tail. It's things like that. But no one says don't use those hammocks because they're the most common hammock. They're what everyone wants. They love these plush hammocks. And that's fine. Use those hammocks. But the other hammocks are also fine. And the same thing with the basket is sometimes injuries are going to happen, but you don't necessarily have to blame the object for them. And that is the case with the hammock. I've never had an issue with that kind of hammock, not once. I've only had issues with fleece ones. I'm not saying don't use the fleece hammocks. Absolutely use them. Make sure to trim them up if they are like a little bit chewed but still usable. Just trim up the little loose bits so they don't get stuck. But yeah, both kinds of hammocks are fine. Next, let's talk about certain kinds of bedding. I often get comments with varying degrees of hostility. I've gotten someone saying, that better not be pine in your cage. And it's just like, okay, what you gonna do about it? And it's not pine. This Santa Chips, what I use is aspen mostly. I have a little bit of pine in there, but it's mostly aspen. It's like a pine aspen mix. And the thing is, pine is fine, aspen is fine, cedar is not. But a lot of people are still under the impression that pine shavings are not safe for rats. They are, as long as they're kiln drying. It takes care of the August. As long as it's kiln drying, it is safe. Cedar is still not safe. And I also get that kind of comment with the paper bedding, because if a rat were to eat it, they could become obstructed with the paper pellets. We've discussed this already. Rats are very, very unlikely to ingest the things that they are chewing. And if they are ingesting it, that is a separate medical issue that needs to be addressed, not by removing the bedding, by figuring out why they are sick and how they are sick. So yes, paper pellets are fine, pine is fine, aspen is fine. And now lastly, let's talk about toilet paper rolls before I get into like the broader discussion. The thing with toilet paper rolls is a lot of people throw them into their rat's cage and they make like foraging toys out of them, or they just throw them in there for nesting material. The rats like to chew them up, again, nest with them, and it's just a fun enrichment thing for them. However, sometimes some people have an instance where their rat, especially a young rat, because it's not going to happen with older rats, will try to go through the toilet paper tube and get stuck. I've had this happen. It happened with Snail, actually, when I had first gotten her. She got scared by something. She got spooked and she tried to run through a toilet paper tube and she got stuck. I happened to be there, so I ripped it open, pulled her out, and she gave me this look just like, that was scary, Mom. That was really scary. And yeah, she could have injured herself if I hadn't been there, admittedly. But again, this is only an issue for particularly young rats. And the thing with this, it's similar with the hammocks. Sometimes something happens, but you shouldn't blame the object. It's just a fluke. I've had a rat get stuck in a toilet paper tube one time. The key with this is to not put them where they're going to be like moving around a lot. So don't put them like a carrier. Don't put them where, if like you put them back in the cage at the top of the cage where they might get spooked by something, don't put them up there. I've only had standard size rats or adult rats go through toilet paper tubes when they were spooked by something, because they're not thinking, they're just darting through, they're just like darting. Typically they go over them or they literally pick them up and throw them. So I'd still consider it perfectly fine to keep toilet paper tubes in the cage. If you are worried about it, you can just, cut up one side so that it is open and then they can't get stuck. But it'll still roll because it's been rolled for so long. Now, the point of this, the conclusion I want to talk about. Sometimes people get a little paranoid about these things. I've seen people who had an instance with a hammock And so they only had baskets in their cage. I've seen people have an issue with a basket, so they only have hammocks in their cage. I've seen people choose not to do ropes because one of their rats got like a string from the rope wrapped around their toe, so they don't do any ropes. And the thing is, you cannot foolproof your cage. You cannot make this 100% safe because things happen. Rats are very small. Their toes can get stuck in things. Their tails can get stuck in things. They can fall. You cannot prevent injuries 100%. And sometimes you're going to see people making posts like, don't use this thing in your cage because it hurt my rat. And it's going to be a whole thing. You might even see it shared around a lot. And to a degree, this is fear mongering. And I understand. I don't want my rats to get injured either. I don't want them to get hurt. I try very hard to make sure their cage is safe. I try to make sure that there's nowhere they can fall where they won't be caught. I try to make sure that the hooks aren't going to hurt them. I try to make sure of all sorts of things. I don't use zip ties because of the sharp end, and you can sand down the sharp end, but like I don't have that kind of patience. But I don't use zip ties because of that. Also because they can chew them down and then they fall. So like I get the thought process. But there is nothing you can put in your cage that's going to be 100% safe. They can injure themselves on so many things. So whenever someone has an issue and then they start saying, don't use this kind of thing with your rats because it's going to hurt them, it's better to weigh the pros and the cons of using that object as opposed to just getting scared that your rat's going to get hurt. Because everyone's experience is going to be different. Like, the worst injury I've had with a rat was the cage itself. It was one of those cages that fold up the sides, you know, where it's hooks on opposite sides and you just fold them up like that. Her toe got caught between the walls and she severed her toe. I still have cages that are like that. I just make sure that the sides are either far enough apart that their foot can easily slide through or close enough together that their toe cannot get caught. But those cages are... the vast majority of smaller cages have that. Like the preview here, it has that right here, see? But their foot cannot get caught in that. So I still use those. I've had a rat, my rat, Orville, she had a recurring abscess on her stomach. And she first got it because a piece of hemp, she jumped down and a piece of hemp poked into her stomach because it was sharp. A lot of hemp can be very sharp. I'm not saying don't use hemp. You can still use hemp. It was an accident. So don't immediately get scared because you're using something in your cage and someone else's rat got injured. Just do a little bit more research, figure out if that's a common issue, and then debate from that whether or not you want to keep using that object. Sometimes, yes, there are things that can be dangerous for your rats, like wire wheels or those sawdust huts. Those are dangerous for your rats. But sometimes, like with certain kinds of hammocks or toilet paper tubes, flukes happen, and that's not necessarily the fault of the object or the rat or you. Sometimes rats just get injured. Sometimes you don't even know how they get injured. Like Baker, he is a clumsy boy. And when I first got him and he was figuring out how to climb because he'd never been in a cage where he had to climb before, he injured himself a lot. And I was trying so hard to make it easier for him to navigate. He was in a single story too. I was trying so hard to make it easier for him to navigate, and he never really got the hang of the single story. It wasn't until he was in a double that he stopped injuring himself quite as much. And that might seem counterproductive to you, so like, how is that possible? And I don't fully know the answer, but I think it's just because the double, I stuff it so much with like fall breaks, whereas with the single, I can stuff the middle a lot, but it's not a guarantee that he's actually going to catch himself. Like, I can put things in the double that I can't put in here. But yeah, just keep in mind that you're not necessarily doing anything wrong just because you have an object in your cage that someone else had an issue with. Just do your research. Just make sure that you're doing the best you can for your rats. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, you know what to do. All the fun stuff down below. And I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!